good nucleus of guys, veteran players that are going to continue to develop and get better at their skill. And then we want to also close the gap with some of these first year players that had just got here in January, of getting them kind of comfortable in our systems offensively and defensively, and things that we're doing on special teams, and, you know, building their confidence and closing the gap between those first year players and those veteran players. So it's a pretty good agenda to work with for 15 practices. I do feel that the team is very hungry about the start of this, which is really keeps us as coaches excited about the process that we're getting ready to embark. So I feel really good about, you know, what we've done to this point. So practice starts tomorrow. And really the bottom line, the finishing goal of spring is to make sure that we come out of it, or come away from spring feeling like we got a really strong foundation set with our offense and defense and special teams, and kind of a snapshot of what we think we can continue to build from going into summer and into fall camp. So we are excited about, you know, the start, and hopefully it's to be a very productive session for us.
Okay, Coach, our first question is from Justin Guerrero.
Hey, Coach, nice to see you. For those of us that went to CU's Pro Day a couple weeks ago, we got to see JT Shroud a little bit. Him just going through the motions, serving as quarterback for a few drills. I'm wondering just what you can share with us about him in terms of his health status, and overall, what are your expectations for JT this spring in terms of what you anticipate he'll be able to do participation-wise as spring goes on?
JT is ahead of schedule with where his, you know, his surgery and injury and recovery standpoint. Like you said, you saw him probably in the Pro Day taking drops and throwing and things like that. He looks like he's in pretty good health. We definitely feel he's ahead of the curve right now, but we want to be cautious as to how much work we give him this spring. You know, we want to make sure he comes out of spring feeling that he's made some great progress, not only from an offensive standpoint, but physically, that he feels that he's on the right track to being a full-fledged competitive player. But you know, most of his spring will not be, you know, he won't be cleared for like live scrimmage work, you know, but he will do a lot of drill sessions within the practices, you know, the individuals, the routes that we throw with the skill people, the 7-on-7s, things like that. So we feel he's going to be able to do a lot of it, but not probably the full contact stuff.
Okay, next one's from Henry Chisholm from DNVR.
Hey, Karl, last season you mentioned a leadership committee quite often, just like a group of guys that you bounced ideas off of, that sort of thing. With some of the roster turnover, just what is the state of that committee? Have you subbed in new people? Are you waiting to see who belongs there? Just what's up with that?
Well, the committee is still the committee, and we have it every year, and you know, it's going to be comprised of obviously the members of the team for that giving season. And the committee changes year after year, you know, because you graduate players or players move on, things like that. It's happened over between last season and to this point right now. So our Unity Council is still intact. We got 16 great members on it. Obviously, you know, with the complexion of the team in terms of the rosters, the changed roster. So it is reflective of we think the qualities of the men that we have in our program right now, you know, who have done things the way that we're prescribing things to be done. They're doing a great thing within their peer group with creating great leadership. They got a great work ethic. They're being very consistent. You know, those are kind of the bare essentials to being on that Unity Council. But I would say for the most part, Henry, it's still in place. Obviously, it changes year after year, but we feel just as strongly this year that it's going to be a very effective council that's going to help this team be successful.
Adam Munster-Tiger from Buff Stampede.
Hey, Coach, when we had a chance to talk with Coach Sanford in February, he mentioned that he felt like the program was full of people that had a massive chip on their shoulder. Is that something that you've sensed being in the building this offseason and going into spring ball?
we've had a very competitive offseason, and there's a number of players that came away from last season that are returning players that felt like, they can be much better, than what they were a year ago. So there are some motivational factors that I think each player has, depending on their situation. The veteran players are definitely eager and chomping at the bit to continue to improve and to reestablish themselves in the program. We got new players that, the reason why we recruited them is that we thought that they could impact us and help us, in this coming season. So there's a lot of motivation within this team, in all different ways, about being competitive and making their mark on this football team. So, there is a little bit of a chip. We got a lot to prove. Obviously, we have a bad taste in our mouth from last season. It wasn't the type of season we were expecting. So we definitely have some work to do, and they understand that. So they're ready to get to work and to really start developing and getting this team to be as good as they can be.
Next up, Brian Howell from the camera.
Hey, Coach, if I remember right from last year, you guys were able to kind of rely on a lot of your veterans to help bring those young guys on and focus the spring more on the young guys. And I know you alluded to that's an emphasis this spring. But with all the new coaches, does that kind of make that a difficult balance for you you're trying to establish some new coaching, but then also bring those new guys along?
No, not necessarily, Brian. I think the new coaches with the football school and the things that we've done to this point, they have bridged a lot of that gap, between them being new and getting to know the current players and stuff like that. The challenge is always going to be, to play, your best elements, on both sides of the ball, really getting a chance to improve your systems. There's new faces that are doing certain things, certain new coaches that are doing certain things, but I think we're past that, that introductory level, I guess, in terms of them being here. I know Gerald Chapman's our newest coach. He's only been here a week or two, but other than him, the rest of the new coaches have been here, really for the most of the off season to this point, and had meetings and had walkthroughs and have done some things with the current team. So that bridge should be pretty much crossed, other than, really just getting more familiar with the coaching styles and getting more familiar with what that looks like on the field. So I don't think it'd be a hard transition, because really the bulk of it we establish in the football school.
Next up is Nikki. Doesn't say your last name, so I'm not sure where you're from, Nikki.
Nikki Edwards with the Bold. Can you hear me all right?
We can hear you.
Sure.
The Bold.
Great. All right. Hey, Coach. I saw one of the goals this offseason is to replace the departing defense. From what you've seen on film or in these early practices, who are some of the defensive standouts within the recruiting class?
I didn't quite understand the first part of that question. Will you repeat that again?
From what you've seen on film and in these early practices, who are some of the defensive standouts within the recruiting class?
Not quite film.
Okay.
There's, we did our extensive studies of last season in terms of the things we did well or not did well last year. We've made some tweaks to our systems on both sides of the ball. Obviously, the biggest one is offensively. It is a new offense, so that's going to be completely new. I think defensively, there won't be as many changes as what the offense has dealt with. So it's really, there's been some certain tweaks that we've done within our system that we felt are going to help us in 2022. So we're anxious to get to work on all of those things. We haven't had any practices until we start practice tomorrow. So, but we've had meetings and film work, and we've had some meetings on the field in terms of walkthroughs, stuff like that. But we feel like we're in pretty good shape where the guys have digested the new information that we've added to our system, and they're eager to kind of get it to work. So we're going to try to get those things ironed out and tuned up, over the next 15 practices.
To the outskirts of Taos, New Mexico, and CUBuffs.com's Neil Welk.
Hey, Carl, a question about the new offense. How important is it for you to develop what I would call an offensive identity as you start to go through this spring ball so that this team knows when they have the football, this is who the Buffaloes are?
Good question, Neil. And I think we're all kind of curious to see how that will end up, after 15 practices. So we have a little bit of an idea about where we want to take this thing, but I think what's really going to create the foundation and what direction we're definitely going to, throw all of our hats in the ring to go is going to really depend on these 15 practices with where we think our strengths are, our weaknesses are, and really moving forward from that standpoint. So I know offensively, we have some good veteran pieces coming back, particularly guys returning starters at some of the skill spots, but we still have to mend ourselves as an offense to do things in a very productive manner consistently, which has been our biggest challenge over the course of the season last year. So that identity part will get identified at some point. We don't know exactly that's gonna look like as of right now, Neil, but I would say it's definitely something. We want to create balance. We want to be able to throw the ball much, much better than what we've done a year ago, where we didn't have a lot of yards and a lot of touchdowns and a lot of high completion percentage. We want to improve our running game. So there's definitely a lot of areas offensively that we want to make sure that we address. But I think the identity part will define itself at some point. It's hard to say what that is right now.
Jacob Toby from 9 News.
Coach, what will you look for tomorrow in the first practice? I know it's so early and you have a lot of stuff to take a look at, but what will you sort of zoom in on and focus in on as kind of the new season starts tomorrow?
There'll be a lot of excitement tomorrow, with guys stepping on the field with the helmets on and playing and things like that. So, I know the energy is going to be there and the competitiveness is going to be there. I want us to become a smarter, more confined team, which really understands the game a little bit better. Those are the things that stick out in my mind. I know their attitude and their competitiveness is going to be strong and they're going to be flying around and stuff like that, but we wanted to make sure it looks like we've made the progress in certain instances with development of how guys are playing, how are they putting themselves in their football positioning, things like that I think will really shore some things up in our mind as to, what direction we need to go. But, I feel good about what this team has done to this point. I guess I'm cautiously optimistic about how I feel we're going to have an excellent spring, but we still have to put that into action. Our vision of what we want to do, everybody sees it and they all understand the goals and expectations, but now the action part has to match the vision. So that's what I'm curious to see, is if we can focus on doing what our agenda is expecting to accomplish and really attacking it and hopefully checking off all the boxes.
Back to Brian Howell.
Carl, I guess I got a two-part question here, but as far as personnel, guys like Nigel, Maurice Bell, Jalen Stryker were injured at the end of last year. How many guys do you anticipate not being able to participate in the spring? And are there any areas of concern that you have as far as depth for this spring?
There's a lot of guys that have had, either surgeries during the season or surgeries off after the season that will not be full participants this spring. They'll be limited, and may gain full participation by the end of spring, but we'll have to, cross those bridges when we get to them, because we had a great meeting today for about 2 hours talking about our injuries and guys, how the recoveries have been and where they are in terms of their development, in terms of from a rehab standpoint. And a lot of them are really, really close. So, we just don't want to bite off too much, too much more than what we can chew right now. We want to make sure we're doing it smart. We're bringing those guys along, safely, where they are getting some work and they are getting better, and they also are getting better, from a rehab standpoint. But, a lot of those guys that you've mentioned, Brian, they'll be involved in spring to some capacity. Some won't be full-fledged live, scrimmage participants, but they'll be able to do some work that can help their skill development.
Back to Adam Mustertiger.
Coach, since we last talked to you, it looks like Jack Lamb has decided to medically retire, and then Josh Giants kind of moving into a coaching role. I'm just curious what your conversations were like with both those guys as they made those decisions.
With Jack, he was extremely disappointed, in himself. With, he did finish the season in a positive note, with what he did at the end of last season prior to his injury. He's had an injury past even prior to being here at Colorado. He's had it, at Notre Dame. And I think with his frustration was, he didn't see he can play a high level of football, at least at the expectation level that meets his thoughts, to help our team be as good as it can be. And he was very frustrated by it. He was trying to work through it. The doctors were telling him there's an opportunity that this could happen. And he just felt, that was probably the best case scenario for us moving forward, is that since his situation had such uncertainty, he didn't want to put the team in a bad situation about, counting on him to be a contributing factor for the football team. So with discussions with his family, with our doctors, with our coaches, that's what was best for him. So it was a hard decision. Believe me, he was very disappointed and crying and all those things, but he was trying to look out and do what's best for the program. As for Josh Gines, Josh is graduating this spring and he wants to dabble in coaching. And, he knows that his time of playing the game is probably, it's not going to be any further than where it is right now in terms of him getting a chance to play at the next level. But he did feel like he has an interest in coaching. So we kind of tied him into working with our offensive staff. He's been enjoying every bit of it. I call him Coach Giants now, and he loves his new name. So he's doing well. He's doing well. So he's transitioning well. He's trying to help us as a program, and also he's getting his degree and trying to get himself situated.
And I'll remember Jack Lamb went out with a blaze of glory with the 88-yard fumble return that turned the Washington game.
Yes, we know.
I'm reminding them. Any other questions from the crowd? Then we'll close. I'll ask the obvious one. Coach, your third year at CU, your second spring practice, your first with no COVID restrictions. How much are you looking forward to normal practicing?
That question came up earlier. We're just excited to get back on the field. But with that excitement, we know that there's a lot of work to be done. They're not happy about, what happened last year. So we want to get that taste out of our mouth and look forward to 2022 and get on the field and play good football. And, this team is really close. Their camaraderie, their commitment to each other, how hard they've been working with each other, competitive in the weight room and in our conditioning drills, all those things that they've been doing, they're excited about getting on the field and, playing some football. So the coaches are just as excited.
And we're looking forward to getting pictures of everybody without wearing masks.
Yeah. Sounds good. All right.
Anything else? Looks like we're done for this. So Coach, thanks for hopping on for a few, and we will see you after practice tomorrow.
All right. Thank you.